Hello, I'm Sean Lambert, and I wanted to talk about my first year on YouTube making videos about war games.
On the 22nd of June 1941, the invasion of the Soviet Union began, opening up the Eastern Front and committing Germany to a two-front war. Now, it's only the Eastern Front from the Germans' point of view, so you know what? We're calling it the Western Front.
Before I get into the details of my year, I want to start by talking about what I didn't do with my YouTube channel, which was make a music YouTube channel. I'm actually a guitarist, play banjo and a couple other instruments like shakuhachi as well. And I originally wanted to make a music-related channel where I could expose like local musicians to the YouTube world. And I thought it would have been really cool, doing interviews with, local musicians and having like recording sessions, kind of building off of like that pedal shows model. But I realized that I didn't have the equipment to do it, and the equipment to do it would have been very expensive. And I couldn't even get the software to work for even the simplest type of video, like just sitting there playing guitar. And I was just super frustrated with it. I fiddled with it for over a month. Obviously, February 24th was the first video that I did for Wargaming. So that up until that point, I've been struggling with the music thing. And eventually I was like, screw it. I will just make videos about games. And at the time, I didn't know what game. I quit playing Dota. I was a big Dota 2 player. And I played like 5,000 hours of this stupid game. And I had quit it like 2021. And it was maybe a year after I really wanted to quit it. So I kept with it for another year. I really wanted to quit it in like 2020. But it was one of those games that's just like super addictive. And once you even have it installed on your machine, you're always just tempted to play it. But I had made the choice to just never ever play it again, or really any MOBAs. So I was like, oh, what game could I play that would be entertaining to people and that's kind of niche, that doesn't have a huge following? Originally, I was like, well, should I do like Hearts of Iron? Because there's a ton of Hearts of Iron YouTube channels. And I was like, well, too many people have already done that. And in December, I had bought War in the East because there's something about Hearts of Iron 3 that I really liked that wasn't there in Hearts of Iron 4. And the Hearts of Iron 4 was going in a completely different direction from what I liked in a war game. And at the same time, I had watched Strategy Gaming Dojo's videos, and I think I mentioned him in a couple of my other videos, but he was a big inspiration on the initial style of my videos, basically just like live streaming your gameplay while talking about history and the the meta and what to do with your units. So when I first started, I was just gonna be like, well, I'll just raw record these and immediately upload them. I didn't do any editing, just recorded, uploaded, and I tried to cut them into like hour long segments, which I realize now is way too long. And some of them were way more than an hour. I think my longest was like 90 minutes or something like that. But I really wanted to get through turn after turn after turn, And the first few turns of War in the East are huge. They're very, very time consuming, either as the Soviets or as the Germans. They are extremely time consuming. So as I went on, I realized that I needed to just keep grinding. I couldn't, at that point, I was like, I can't change what I'm doing. I wanted to be able to edit the videos, but I didn't really have the ability to on that computer. I didn't have any, editing software. I was just using OBS to record and upload. And about the time where I wanted to start doing the editing, all of a sudden, my computer died. The motherboard was dead. There was a short in it, and it fried everything. The power supply was bad. The GPU was bad. It was like total rebuild time. So I decided I didn't have the money to build a new computer at that point. So what I decided to do was to continue making the videos. I wanted to continue continue on, and I was able to make like 7 or 8 videos about GMT's A World at War. And that really taught me about the value of the physical board games. And I learned a lot about kind of the history of board games as I went into that. And that led me into kind of a diverging path of looking at board games, which, while they definitely share a lot in common with War in the East, the board war games do tend to be a little bit simpler in terms of execution, while still having enough complexity that they're fun. So I did like that about them. Maybe A World of War is not a particularly complicated game, but it still feels nice and complex when you're playing it. There's enough rules that you have to learn. And I think that's really what attracted me about war games in general, is Dota was such a complicated, constantly evolving game with very, very detailed rules that you had to know, down to the minutia. And I love that about the game. The rules of Dota were my favorite part, and how the meta would respond to just a slight little change in a rule. So I guess I've always had that kind of designer's view of games in general, where you're really interested in what happens if I do this. And board war games really kind of reminded me that the rules are so important to a game. How you play it is really just how you interpret the rules. And without the structure and being forced to play it a certain way, because the computer forces you to play the game correctly, more or less, it's so much more wide open. And I was like, wow, you can really play the same game, could be played by different people in different ways. And I never really, you could do that with computer games just as easily, but I never really thought about it in that way. And so I think it was actually a good experience not having the computer, but still tried to make the videos. And it definitely taught me about making videos in a more entertaining way. I started, putting myself as, I guess, the main character in some of the videos. I tried talking a little bit more at the beginning. Obviously, I have no problem talking to cameras because I love to talk and I could care less what people think. It was an interesting experience working with the camera. I had actually had a history doing broadcasting in college and high school. I used to be on like the school news kind of thing. So I've been in front of the cameras before, so it wasn't an uncomfortable feeling. But what really was valuable about it going forward is I realized, wow, these videos are actually something that maybe somebody out there will buy these games because I'm making them. So that was my greatest hope, is that I would inspire people to play these games. And the few comments I've gotten that have been like that have been just so heartwarming. It's like, that's exactly why I wanted to make the videos in the first place, to make people enthusiastic and excited about playing complicated big war games. And in the next year, I want to continue that. I want to continue to play big games, complicated games, while mixing in some older games too. I've been really interested in how the rules came to be. And as a story to illustrate this, I went to Compass Games Expo last fall, and I was talking with Gregory Smith, who is a game designer. And I knew him because he had designed some of the scenarios in John Tiller's games. And so I knew him from some of his scenarios in that. And we were talking, and he was like, well, I won the Charles S. Roberts award for this game. And he could see by my blank expression, I had no idea what he was talking about. I didn't know who Charles S. Roberts was. I didn't know anything about the history of games. I didn't even know they had awards for games, to be honest. But so that was a humbling experience. And there were so many more moments like that over the last year where I had no idea what I was doing. And it was that was the joy of learning something that's kind of brand new, even though I have obviously played games forever and had been part of different elements of the YouTube thing in the past. it's different when you're trying to do it, day in, day out. The other thing that was really humbling was getting up to speed on recording software and the all the software that you need to edit videos. So I ended up picking DaVinci Resolve for my editing suite, and I was like, wow, this is like Avid, and it's free. I was amazed because when I was in school, we used Avid a lot, and that's really expensive. It was very expensive at the time. Our copies were like $3,000. We're like, and I fired up DaVinci, and it was like, oh my God, this thing is great. It's free. It does more than what our Avid used to do. And so that was an eye-opening experience because a lot of people who are involved in editing and stuff like that seem to gravitate towards Adobe Premiere, which is very, very expensive. And you don't ever really hear people talking about DaVinci. So I was very happy to find it. Worked great for me. How long it will last, I don't know. But if you ever have questions about editing stuff, I actually recommend DaVinci. Maybe it has some weird copyright issues, but frankly, I don't care. I don't make money off the product, so it's barely commercial, if you could call it commercial. So over the next year, my goals are basically to fire up a couple multiplayer campaigns. I want to find opponents and play a few multiplayer campaigns, either in War in the East or in any game, really. But I want to have a couple multiplayer campaigns going that I can showcase how a human would use the air forces, for example, because the computer really min-maxes things perfectly a lot of the time. And they will be able to cheat in some games. So in War in the East, for example, they have like unlimited movement. They can just move their guys super far, like ridiculously far in some cases, if you're on the harder difficulties. So that's kind of the way that if the normal mode is too easy for you, you have to go up to like the cheating mode, which I never find particularly fun. I also have played a lot of Company of Heroes 2, which has a pretty big multiplayer scene. I haven't played the new game at all, but I'd be willing to give that a try potentially. I did one video on Call to Arms, Gates of Hell, Ostfront, but frankly, it did so badly, I was like, well, I'm never going to touch this thing again. And kind of the same with that World War I game. I was like, why don't people like these games? They seem great. But maybe the people who watch my videos just don't like those games, which is fine. But that's one of the main goals. Find some opponents, play some longer form games, hopefully. But I'm perfectly willing to do the single session games if that's easier to manage. And then I'm hoping to get to at least the Compass Expos, which are very nearby, and maybe I can do one other one this year. But I would like to go to a couple conventions because the experience at a convention of having that dedicated time where it's just you and the people who are playing the games, and you don't have to worry about dealing with the rest of your life for a few hours, is really, really great because you really learn a lot about the games and how other people view games. Getting to hear just opinions about different games in a series, for example, is really interesting because I know nothing about the history of these games, and the people there know everything, and it's great. So I like to just go there and just ask a ton of questions and be like a sponge, but it would be nice to get to at least a couple of those this year. And then the last major goal for the year is to, if there is a game that comes out that is like a tactical level Revolutionary War game, which I think the Ultimate General Revolutionary War game might be that, I'm not sure. But what I'm looking for is like a tactical level, kind of like a map-based tactical level Revolutionary War game. Maybe the one already exists, but that's what I'm looking for. And I want to integrate that as a battle resolution mechanic with War for America and have a giant Revolutionary War campaign. I think that would be very entertaining. I like those combined like Total War style campaigns. I think they're nice to watch. And one other thing that I've been doing on the side is I've actually been designing a game about the Crimean War, the 1853 Crimean War, not the current one, but it's coming along. I've gone through a few iterations of a map, several iterations of rules, and I've done some play testing on it. And I think it's actually kind of a fun system. It's an impulse based system, so you will have, instead of like I go you go system, you have basically action points for each army, and so you activate one army or one division, and then your opponent gets to activate. So you're trading activations, so they're like mini turns, which is a very common mechanic in a lot of games, and I really like it. And I like the way that the blind sword system does their activations, where you're activating just a division at a time, making the moves. I think it feels more realistic, like the battle is not unfolding all at once, and I want to see it work on like an operational level, where you have a whole campaign. You got to worry about the logistics and bringing in reinforcements and a real campaign. So if I can get a play testable version of that out to the public this year, that would be great. I want to get to like a beta stage, essentially. But I don't really know anything about the process of how you get to the point where it can be published. So, and because it's just my first game, it probably will never see the light of day. But I want to learn about that part of the process and maybe do a couple interviews, if I can get somebody to agree to do them, about the business side of gaming. How these companies even exist? How do they run? Like, how does a company like Compass Games or GMT exist in today's day and age, where everything is so computerized, the materials are so expensive, even though they're getting a lot of this stuff printed in China and shipping it over here, it's still outrageously expensive. How do they sell these games to people to make enough that the company can even run? Like, do they pay themselves? Do they do it for free? What do they pay the designers? What are like the most successful games business wise? Like, what is the profit margin on a game? Those are the questions that I've never ever seen people talk about. The business side of wargaming is a complete black hole, and I would love to know about it, to see, like, is it a financially healthy ecosystem, or is it one of these things that is propped up by just volunteerism? So that's one of my long-term goals. Probably not going to get that done this year, but if you have any other questions about my channel or about any of the games that I play, always feel free to ask them. I try to answer every single YouTube comment if I can, if I know the answer to. Otherwise, I'll just click the heart button, and that, if you get a heart but no response, that means yes, I thank you. I have no idea what to say. So until next time, see ya.